Okay, day two. So, the first thing I actually want to do is look at Adam's solution to yesterday's puzzle, because he had a really interesting observation here in lines 21 and 20, where he points out that both of the moving windows have I plus 1 and I plus 2 in them. So you can actually just compare I plus 0 and I plus 3, since you're just comparing sums and they have shared components of the sum. So that way you don't even have to calculate a sum at all. You can just compare the I plus 3 index or the I plus 2 index plus to the I plus 1 or the I plus 0 index, which I thought was really interesting and makes it faster, all remembering that it's quite fast already. And then as always, Carl has some really fun answers to the question, how much can you fit in a single line, which he got the entire thing into one line, but I agree it is rather obscene. So anyhow, if you want to see the power of a list comprehension, you can go check out Carl's. So I've already pulled up today's puzzle, and it's very similar to one last year, except for without the rotation and left and right elements. So it's just got horizontal. So basically, we need to keep track of our submarine's position. It can go either forward, backward. Actually, I think it can only go forward. Yeah, just forward, down, and up. And then down increases the depth because we're measuring depth, not elevation. So let's get the puzzle input. Okay, so same thing as yesterday. First, we're going to just do instructions is the list of. So for this one, we don't want to convert it to an integer, right? So we're going to take the new line off. Actually, we don't need to do this at all. I'm realizing, at least for part one, we don't need to store the instructions at all. We can just read them straight from disk. So let's instead do with open input.txt, and we're going to read. So this opens a file. Open opens a file. We did this yesterday as well. And if you put it in a with statement, you don't have to remember to close it, which is nice because it's easy to forget to close things. As f for line in f, line equals line r strip. So now we're going to iterate through every line of the file. Let's create a depth and which is 0, and a position, I guess, of 0, because that's where they're initialized. It says here both start at 0. And then for line in f, we can. So if line 0 equals f, we want to move forward, right? So you can, just like with a list, you can index strings with the same indexing as you do lists. So if the first letter of this string is an f, that means we want to move forward. So, well, first of all, let's just take distance equals line dot split, which splits wherever you tell it to. I think space is the default, but I'll be explicit. And then we want the second half of that, and then we want to make that an integer. So position plus equals distance, elif line 0 equals d. We want depth plus equals distance, else depth minus equals distance, and this will be if it's an up. So the last thing to do is, I assume, well, I don't know. Let's take a look at our input really quick, because if there's any lines that are blank, we'll need to handle that, but it does not look like there are. So that's great. I didn't think there would be. So this should actually work if we just print depth times position. Let's try that. Great, easy peasy. So now, let's read the second part. Okay, so this just modifies what each instruction does. So we could rewrite this whole thing, but reading from disk is one of the slowest things you can do in a program, so we should only ever do that once. And the nice thing is we can actually accomplish all these things in the same aim, the same loop through the lines of the file. So let's create a new variable aim, and then position is fine. Position will remain the same, I believe, right? 15, yep. So we can leave position, and then we can say aim depth equals 0. And then if we're moving forward, we want depth plus equals aim times distance, right? Yep, because forward 8 does 8 times our aim. And then down, we'll do depth plus equals instance. Oh, we want aim depth here. And then, so this is for part 1. So we'll just put that here. And then for part 2, we can have aim depth, aim plus equals distance. And then otherwise, we want aim minus equals distance. So now we want to print that and print aim depth times position. Much bigger. Great. So that was part 2. Just a single loop through a file. Yeah, I actually think this one was easier than yesterday's. You'll feel free to tell me it wasn't, but I'm excited to see what clever solutions other people come up with. This, I would say, is kind of the basic, the obvious one. All right, I'll see you guys this afternoon.